challenges, traffic, and bad road conditions, he didn't get to the trailhead until 5:45 p.m. that night. Sam knew it was a bad idea to start this hike so late because he's going to run out of daylight and he was not going to make it 4 miles to the point where he ended up camping out. But he figured with his good health and fitness, he could probably quickly make his way to the 2 or even 3 mile mark. And there were some suitable campsites there. And so he decided he could kind of risk it and just try to go as fast as he could and use the daylight he had to reach a suitable campsite. But he wasn't able to move as fast as he thought he could, and soon the sun was down and it's totally warm. He's got his flashlight, but that only is able to shine like in front of him. And at one point, he heard the falls off of this rock, and he noticed had he fallen, he would have gotten really bad hurt. And he's 15 miles away from the nearest help. And he's in that self-service area. The roads getting out here are treacherous. No one knows exactly where he is. And it dawns on him that you made a pretty bad choice, and you should stop right now and make camp here and not try to escape. And so as it happened, where he was, there was this forest right nearby. You could see there was a clearing about 30 feet off the tap to shine his light. And so he walked into that clearing. He found a great spot to camp. And in fact, the edge of this clearing was the remnants of a fire pit. It was very old, but it at least showed someone had camped out right here. They seemed to be able to find. So suddenly he was feeling pretty smart. He felt pretty good about where he was staying. Now, Sam intentionally did not bring the tent. He liked to sleep on a sleeping bag, that he had string of the cart holding the top of it in case of rain. And since this clearing was surrounded by pine trees, he was able to string up his tarp over the top, and it was perfect. And pretty soon he had a fire going, and he tried to canned beans. And as he was eating, he started to get a sense that something was wrong, something was coming. He began scanning the tree lines, and he was in a blind spot out of the road. His visibility was incredible. He skipped right up against the fire. And if you've ever sat next to a fire in the forest, your visibility is like 5 feet in a circle around the fire. You really cannot see beyond that. And his vision was also limited by all the pine trees that encircled his clearing. So he really could only see what's immediately around him. And he starts thinking, well, that's going to be it. Maybe I'm just nervous because I haven't done this. But as he's rationalizing this kind of bad feeling, a rock the size of a marble was soaring into the campsite and lands at his feet. And he looks down at the rock, and he connects out of that sense of dread. And he's looking around a little more aggressive. Again, his vision is very, very limited. And so for the next 15 minutes, Sam is really aggressively scanning the tree line, listening really intently, and doesn't hear anything, doesn't see the rocks get thrown. So he begins to rationalize and convince himself that there's nothing wrong here. That feeling I have, I won't worry about it. He starts telling himself, I must have kicked the rock. That's what it is. Or maybe the rock fell off the tree. But either way, it's totally explainable if nothing worked. After a little while, he convinced himself that he was sleeping back in his heart and sleep. A couple hours later, Sam wakes up and he has that same sense of dread, and now it's back with a vengeance. He can't hear anything, he can't see anything, but it's definitely feeling like something is wrong. And at that moment, as he's listening really intently and looking really carefully, he hears the smell of rustling leaves. It sounds like something from the leaves about 30 or 40 feet or so away from his campsite. And initially, he can't tell if this person or animal is coming towards his campsite or away, but over the next 30 seconds or so, the sounds start to fade, and he convinces himself that maybe everything's fine. But just in case, he likes to grab his flashlight and shine it in that direction. And so he reaches next to him where he had left it laying on the bed, probably on the floor there, and he can't find his flashlight. He's looking around for it, he can't find it. He's like, man, that's weird. I had it right here, right next to the body. It's not here anymore. And that's when the alarm bells start going off in his head, because the only way this flashlight moves is if he moves. If it's not here, how can it move? So he jumps out of his sleeping bed, ducks out from the tarp, and he's looking around and around in the immediate vicinity of where he's sleeping on his flashlight. And as he's looking out of the corner of his eye, he sees some light. He turns his head, and in the same direction that he heard those footsteps of rustling boots, he's still laying down. He sees his flashlight laying on the ground about 10 meters away, which means someone or something had been less than a foot away from him to get this flashlight was right next to him while he was fast asleep and totally helpless. And had moved it all the way over there. Immediately, Sam thinks to himself, that's his path. They are trying to lure him away from my campsite. Suddenly, he felt so scared he vomit. But he knew in order to survive this situation, he needed to keep his wits about it. So he puts his boots on and he grabs his knife. He knows he's not leaving this campsite. In fact, he's going to build the biggest fire he can. He's going to stoke that fire as big as he can get it, and he's not going to go anywhere near that much. For the next several hours, Sam just stood in the middle of his campsite holding his knife, preparing to confront whatever the heck is out in the woods. And over those several hours, he would hear footsteps approach his campsite, turn around, and every time the fire got lower, he noticed they would come closer and closer and closer, and when he would stoke the fire, they wouldn't come as close. But at about 3 a.m., he began the fire was escalate into the woods to get more. He'd be out in the woods as the opponents would avoid the woods once again. So as the fire died down, Sam prepared himself mentally for whatever happened next, because he knew that with that fire gone, this thing was comfortable all the way in and all the way up right next to him. And the flash. So finally, he hears some footsteps approaching. Before this, the closest they had come was maybe about 15 meters away. They were far enough away it was terrifying. He had some distance. This time, they walked right up to about 3 meters away. They intentionally come behind the biggest group of trees, so he can't see them. It's still dark outside. He's in that bubble of light and fire, so he's blind to whatever's on the other side of those trees, but he knows they're there. And they've stopped. And for 2 hours, this poor kid is standing in the middle of this campsite, facing in the direction of whatever is behind the trees. Probably his imagination going crazy this week. Behind those trees, just waiting for whatever happens next. But ultimately, the only thing that happened was the sun would eventually come. People were actually probably realized that this thing on the other side finally moved to turn around and ran away. Not come back. So when the sun finally did come, Sam didn't just charge out of there. He's still thinking there could be a trap. He waited until it was totally full sunlight. He packed up everything he had, and he practically sprinted back to the parking lot, back into his car, and he drove nonstop for 20 miles until he got to a gas station where he could park and collect his. And when he got there, he got out of his car, and ran with looking out, he noticed Prince Dawson back in his car. He walks over and just says, "Sleep well?" Sam is confident whoever was stalking him at his campsite is the same person or group of people that wrote this message on his car. And now Sam just wonders what would have happened if I could figure that flashlight. In 1982, a very outdoorsy teenage girl and boy who recently started dating decided to go camping with me. Around 1 a.m. on the first night they were there, the girl wakes up just from the bathroom, and she's about to unzip the tent when she stops. She hears some strange noises coming from outside the tent. It wasn't that loud, but it sounded distinctly like something was digging in the ground. But she really had to go, and she figured, it's maybe something. And so she begins to unzip the tent. There's a little bit of moonlight happening. There's a clearing outside of the tent, so the moonlight's pouring through. So she had plenty of illumination. And so she looks through this tiny hole, and she can't believe what she sees. It is a grown woman squatting down about 2 or 3 feet away from their tent. Her back is to them, so she can't see that she's looking through the tent. And she's feverishly digging into the ground. Literally falls backwards into the tent. And so startled by what she sees. She lands on her boyfriend, who immediately thinks out what's going on, and she goes, and she points at the little hole where she had unzipped the tent, and she goes, the boy is confused, and he can tell his girlfriend is very serious, so he sits up quietly, and he looks through the little opening on the door, and he sees the moving woman. The boy reports and looks at his girlfriend, and he's like, what's going on out there? He takes a flashlight, and she's telling him, don't do it. And he opens up the tent a little bit more, and he aims his flashlight directly at this woman. This gets her attention. She stops digging, and she stands up slowly, and she turns around and faces him. And she's got no expression. She's not giving him any indication why she's there. She's not acting aggressive. She's not acting scared. She's just completely neutral. And she stands there staring at them for quite a while before turning around and just walking away from the house. And after a little while, they were pretty certain she was gone. They opened their tent leg, they go outside, they can scan around with the flashlights, and just working out, and they go to where she was digging, and it's just this weird orange deep hole right? Not no reason. So after sitting there wondering what they could do, they settled on, well, tomorrow we'll tell the Park Rangers that she's here and maybe they'll it's feeling pretty confident that this woman's not going to come back. They will go back into the tent and send a shot at their sleeping bags. They go to sleep. They hear sleep running towards their camp sleep. They know it's this woman. They immediately unzip the tent and look out, and now she's not getting anymore. She's rummaging through some of her stuff that's outside. The way she's been described as monkey, she picks it up, look at it, and throw it over her head. But then it's going to run over and back and forth. It's throwing things behind her. So the boy gets out and shines a light on her and goes, you need to leave. She doesn't react. She just keeps looking through all their stuff until he gets very close and says, you need to leave right now. And that when she then stops, looks at her like, wow. And then she gets up, turns around, and walks away. Now they're completely something to do. She's really come back and being confronted. They stayed outside our tent for about 15 more minutes, shining their light, making lots of noise, treating her like she's an animal, trying to scare her away from the games. After a little bit of time, they thought that there's no way she was going to do this. They were pretty aggressive over this time, and she seemed to really get it. They both go back to the tent. As soon as they zip it shut, they hear her coming, running straight back to the site, like she was literally waiting in the wings when they went back in the tent. This time she runs back to the hole. She's just feverishly digging into the ground as fast as she can, and this time they come out of their tent and they're mad. They're screaming at this woman. Get me out of here. What are you doing? This seems right. Yes, she looks right. She runs. This endless situation. She's terribly totally shaken up with this woman. This woman just keeps coming back to her sight. They don't know what to do. They turn on some lanterns, they put their flashlights inside, which can stay outside. She's asleep. It's hot by about 3:30. They're drinking outside for 2 hours. They get cold, they're super tired, there's nowhere to be found. And so they finally say, it's asleep. I think this is they get back in their sleeping bags, and sleep near her. The next morning, they get out with the unzip their tent, they look outside, and all of their stuff is available all over the campsite. Basically about 4 to 6 inches deep. So if you little on the floor, you realize this woman must have been in the shadows of the woods watching them from 1:30 to 3:30, that whole time they were out there in the morning. She was just waiting, just watching them the whole time in the shadows. And as soon as they went into their tent, she must have given it a little bit of time. She ran pretty back over. She ransacked their site. The strangest thing was, after they looked through all the stuff she had trucked around, it was missing some pretty expensive stuff. After they picked up their site, they went to the park ranger and told him about what happened. The ranger has no idea what to do. He's never heard of something. So the couple just leaves that day because they're not allowed to spend the here. And to this day, they have no idea why this woman was running over their site, digging into the ground, and pushing their stuff. It's like she was just that night. In the early 2000s, a teenager named Evan and his father would regularly go hunting and enjoy the weather. When Evan turned 14, his father befriended a very wealthy dancer who offered him access to the best wedding experience. And just a couple of days later, Evan and his father would take off. Super late, they drove out to the edge of his property. It was actually fenced in. They went to the main gate where they had the compound. This guy given them, they punched in the compound. They began to jump the gate, locked it, and continued their access. They followed this road up 2 miles to the people stop right outside of the school forest. They reflected down with their gear and bravery during this beginning 1980s. Even though they were there primarily for fun, Evan and his father secretly enjoyed just hiking around the woods and camping out, and any chance they got to extend their hunting trips, they would, even if the hunting wasn't good. And so since they spent a ton of time in the woods together, they noticed almost immediately when they walked into this particular forest, it's something was off. Birds, animals, sounds. It's totally silent. The only sounds they heard that were not them was a single plane. They found it's very odd. They figured it's a lot of people around here. I'm sure as soon as we showed up, the animals were aware of us, and they finally make it out to the hunting stand that we were told about. They get all settled in, they're getting ready to see some animals. All day long, they don't see a single animal. They don't hear a single animal. Again, it's just completely silent. Frustrated, they begin packing up their stuff, making their way down on the stand, and they start looking for a place to make camp for the night. And Evan's father suggested, well, hey, there's nothing over here. It's been quiet all day. Why don't we walk deeper into the woods a little ways, set up camp there, so tomorrow we have a better chance of seeing some animals. So they hiked for about an hour, farther away from where they parked their truck, and they reached this clearing, which was perfect for setting up their camp. So they set up their tent, and Evan's father says, hey, we still have some daylight. Do you want to go try our luck and see if we can see some animals out here now? Evan's like, yeah, why not? So they hiked a little ways away from the campsite, set up their blind, and again, there's any animals it's told, it's the turn around this. As soon as they could see their campsite, which really was just their tent, they noticed that their tent was now collapsed. And Evan's father turns to him and says, oh, it must have been the wind. And Evan says, no, it couldn't have been the wind. Because all day today we have been commenting on how quiet it is and how the fact that there's no weather, no wind, no anything is heightening the fact that it's completely silent. So we could not have been wind. So Evan's father is like, well, here's the tent up. Would you not put the posts into the eyelets to not hold it correctly? And Evan's like, no, I've made that tent 1,000 times. I noticed that. They walk into their campsite and they look down at their tent. And they're really confused with this. The two robots that built it next over the top of the tent are thread through nylon loops that anchor and fold the components at the base of the tent. Well, they've been removed from the four corners. If you know how a tent works, it works through tension. And once you have a rod anchored at 2 points, it doesn't just pop out. It's anchored at 2 sides. It's actually difficult to remove each anchor. Once one is out, the other is easy. But basically, the rod would need to break in order to come out of those anchor points with hardness. And they didn't remove them, and none of the rods would go, which leaves them with either they failed to set up those anchors, or they had distinct and clear memories of setting it up and double checking the setup for the users, or something came over to their campsite over and did before hours. They decided, you know what, there can't be some stranger coming over here, because we're the only ones who gave this private property and no one could have been here. And why would they do that if they came to our campsite? Why would they randomly go out to our tent and vanish? So it had to be us. We must have not paid the tent. And while they didn't really believe that they had not paid the tent, they convinced themselves that that's what happened because the alternative was just too bizarre and frankly terrifying. So they build their tent and they build a fire and they stay up for a little while chatting before being tired, saying goes to bed. They extinguish the fire. Again, the tent didn't this thing. A couple hours later, Evan wakes up suddenly. He's not sure if he's dreaming or not, but he thinks he hears someone. Evan instinctively turns to make sure his dad is still in tent with him, and he is. And Evan starts listening really intently to what's happening outside. And all he can hear is silence, like it's been since they got into the woods. Doesn't hear any laughter. And so he says, okay, I must have just been dreaming, and there wasn't any laughter up there. And eventually, Evan goes back to sleep. A little while later, he wakes up and this time, his dad is pouring away. Just Evan says, his dad goes, and Evan listens, and to his horror, he hears laughing. He was dreaming before. Evan also realizes the laughter is not coming from the same area that he heard it. It's now coming from the opposite direction, and it's a lot closer to him. Evan very quietly and carefully explains to his dad that he actually heard this laughter from his holding. It's not his eyes. It's before he came out there and asked the boys if we expect any of the hunters, campers, or anybody nearby who said this is private property. It's fenced in. There's no one there but you guys. After this revelation, they both turn their attention back and just listen, because they're hoping this is just going to stop. And whatever this is, it's just going to be. It doesn't. They hear footsteps running towards them. They are in the forest. It's so quiet. It's really easy to hear these footsteps. Whatever this is charging towards them. And it comes to a complete stop right at the edge of their At this point, Evan is now grabbing his father. Evan's father's holding his rifle. He's getting ready to open his and confront whatever's out there. And right before he grabs the zipper, this person, whatever it is, starts laughing again. And it's practically right on top of them. It's so loud. They can hear it clear as day, right there, right outside their tent. And Evan's father takes a deep breath and grabs the zipper. And as soon as he begins moving again, the sound the zipper made caused the laughing to stop. They don't hear footsteps, so no one is still out there. The laughter stops and doesn't recognize and make noise. They're right there. There they are. Evan's father freezes with his hands against them. He's debating whether he should go outside or not. And before he can make that decision, the first thing is to enter in and reach back and get outside. For several minutes, they just sit like that in total silence, praying that whatever this is gone for good. And after several minutes, they don't hear anything. There's no more laughing, there's no more running. Evan's father, he sips up the tea, puts his hand on again. They're both left, just sitting there thinking, what the heck just happened? Evan and his father would stay up all night where they would barely speak, because whatever this thing was had heard them when they moved the cinema. So they were really afraid of making any sound, even little sounds, because it's so quiet. Sound travels really far, and they don't know who or what is out there. And so in silence, holding their guns, they're just waiting for the sound. As soon as it did, they would pop it out of their literally running out of those checking their photo the whole time holding it back for a time. And so to this day, they have no idea who or what they're fucking around with. They told the people of the property before. They were said it's not just they were totally gated in front of this property. There are cameras watching the only entrance. We were the only ones that were in or out at the time they did, and prior to that, we monitored this property. Nobody else was in there. In 2016, a 25-year-old Wall Street banker named Matt was camping near Mount Rainier in Washington State. His job was just so hectic that in the rare times he got a chance to, he would disappear into the wilderness for a few days to clear his head. Despite living in one of the biggest cities in the world, Matt was actually a very competent outdoorsman. And so for this trip, he decided he would stay way off any trail, deep in the backcountry in random locations. On the first night, he found a nice clearing in the trees, and so he set up his campsite there. He ate some food over his fire, he pitched his tent, climbed inside, and within a few minutes, he was fast asleep. Several hours later, Matt woke up to some strange sounds over inside his tent. It sounded like a couple of animals, or maybe one animal, moving around right inside. And so after a while, just hearing this constant sound, he rolled over and barely unzipped his tent flap just to look out and see if he could see any animal house. And what he saw shocked him. There was a man sitting in front of his fire pit, so firing his fire pit, and the guy was just sitting there with his hands on his knees, looking straight down, and periodically he would just kick his feet in the ashes of the fire pit. And Matt didn't even know what to do. He was just looking at him through this little tiny gap in his tent, and this man all of a sudden looks up directly at Matt and makes eye contact with him. And the guy's eyes go wide, and he stands up, turns around, and runs away from Matt's campsite. Matt has no idea how to react to this, and so he just quickly unzips his tent, jumps outside, and shines his light into the forest looking for this guy. He's thinking to himself, who is this guy? I'm in the middle of nowhere in the backcountry of Washington State. How long does this thing sit there for? What's he want? So as a man trying to make sense of this totally weird thing, he's thinking, okay, I'm going to look out and I'm going to see his flashlight, or I'm going to see his campsite. Maybe he's set up nearby, and he's looking around. There's the total crouch. He's looking at all the trees. Any light source anywhere out there he can see. And there's not one. There's no fire. There's no flashlight. There is nothing. And so eventually, Matt goes back inside of his tent. He zips it up, and he's just left kind of dumbfounded. He can't understand how some person was just sitting outside of his tent for no apparent reason and then vanished into the forest without even turning on a flashlight. And so after a very restless night, finally the sun came up again and Matt was very relieved. He stepped outside, and after a little bit of time now from this strange incident, Matt started to tell himself that all that was is some guy happened to set up his campsite nearby. It is possible, albeit rare, because we're in the backcountry, and maybe he was just intoxicated and he wandered over here, and stranger things had happened, so that's probably all it was. And so Matt felt like there was nothing to worry about. He packed up his campsite and began hiking into the forest. Matt didn't have a planned route. Instead, he had a map and a compass. And he began just kind of wandering in the forest, kind of exploring wherever he wanted to go. And over the next 2 days, he covered at least 10, maybe 15 miles in kind of random zigzag directions. He found a nice clearing and he set up another campsite. At night, he set up a fire and he's eating some food near his fire. And as he's sitting there, he hears rustling coming from behind him. He's pretty sure it's an animal, so he turns around and he doesn't see anything. He goes back to eat his food, and then a little while later, he hears some more rustling. And this time he can't really just write it up. Clearly there's something behind him that's moving around. And so he stood up, turned around, and remained motionless, just listening, expecting to see maybe a deer come out of the woods. But instead, he hears a man's voice come out of the darkness that says, "You'll probably get to roast me." Man's heart starts racing. He knows that even though he can't see it, it has to be the same guy he saw in the basement. His name is nowhere. He hasn't seen any of the hikers or anglers or anyone. And clearly this guy has the ability to speak up on him. And so he's thinking, what does this guy want? I just spent the past 2 days hiking in random directions for 15 miles, and he must have followed me. It's Matt, not knowing those says the whole world's canyons. And there's silence. And Matt, one part of him is thinking, I hope this guy does not move away. I hope he just goes away. The other part of him is thinking, well, maybe this is a different person that is lost. They're looking for this place called Hell's Canyon, and they'll come as the light, they believe, they'll send them on their very way, and they'll find. But as Matt is having this switch of thinking, the voice from the shadows is not any closer. Instead, asks the same question, a bit more forcefully this time. You know how to get roasted? This time, Matt did not respond. Now he was saying, this is not some friendly hyper the first time. And so Matt, knowing he's all alone up here, he really had to do something to try to take control of this situation. So he reached down and grabbed his flashlight, and one swift motion lit this light up and shined it in the direction of this man's voice. What he saw was this guy from 2 days ago looking out from behind the tree right in Matt's direction. He was hiding. And when the light hit him, and barked at Matt to aim it away. And Matt went instinctively over this light, and now he was too scared to raise it again. And now he knows it's the same guy. This guy has been following him. And so for several minutes, Matt just stood there, absolutely terrified. And this guy, he just stayed out there. Matt didn't hear him. It was just a complete standstill. And then his thumb was broken again by this voice, except somehow he didn't move even closer to Matt. And when he came through asking the same question, "Do you know how to get ghosted?" His voice was so close to Matt that Matt was scared and fixed his light up, and the man was standing just a few feet away. This time, the man's eyes went wide, so they saw Matt, turned around, and ran into the forest again. Matt, not knowing any better, just began running after him. He only ran for about 30 seconds. He realized he's running out here, the snow up. He's going to fall, hurt, he's going to get lost. And this guy's already long gone. Somehow Matt run immediately so far. So Matt just goes back to his campsite. He's thinking to himself, what do I do? I have no cell phone service. I'm at least 3 days away from my car. And I'm in the middle of nowhere. No one even knows where I am because I didn't chart a course. I didn't tell anyone where I was going to be. And so Matt just grabbed his knife and stood in the middle of the campsite. And for hours and hours, he spent looking around, expecting this guy to show up again or start speaking to him somewhere out in the darkness. It was absolutely wonderful. Finally, by about 3 in the morning, Matt was so tired that he had to go sleep. He hadn't heard this guy again. He didn't see him again. He figured he needed a little bit of sleep because tomorrow he could go back to his campsite and begin this epic journey back to his car. As he climbed in his tent, he had a very restless next couple of hours. When the sun came up, Matt jumped out of his tent, packed up his stuff, and began practically running in the direction of his car. All day, as he was hiking, Matt leveled over his shoulder, expecting to see this guy, because clearly he had followed him for multiple days, over 15 miles, and so the likelihood that he's still following him was really high. And so all day, Matt just felt like he was watched, he was totally terrified, and then the sun started to go down, and Matt knew he would have to camp out again. So he found a clearing in the trees, set up his campsite, and was so tired, running basically all day, so mentally exhausted, he was experience, and he was not his tent and fell asleep very quickly. But several hours later, he woke up to the sound of somebody walking around his tent. Knew it had to be this guy. He's still in the middle of not even close to the market. And so this guy is still following. So he sat up in his tent, he plugged his knife, and hours and hours and hours all night, this guy just walked around this campus. 4 or 5 in the morning, he escaped from it. The sun finally came up, and he left out his stuff, and literally just began running in the direction of his car, hoping that maybe he could get there before he even get up. It's all day, it's literally over and this guy is home. At this point, it's not even a question. It's somewhere in the forest. We have already seen it. Unfortunately, as the sun is setting, he knew he was not going to be able to make it to his car. He was just too far away. So at some point, we got too much to keep moving. He came nearer to his sentence. And so Matt climbed inside of his tent. He zipped up behind him around his knife. He sat there expecting to hear this guy moving around. But after several hours, he didn't hear him. Matt started to wonder if this guy has left him alone. Finally, maybe he's not following him. And so Matt, who was totally exhausted, laid down to go to sleep. Then, as he's laying there, somewhere out in the woods, "You're going to get to Ghost Canyon." Matt immediately sat up, his heart began racing so fast that he actually was concerned he might have a heart attack. He didn't know what to do, he didn't know what to say, so he just sat there holding his knife. And this guy began running past his campsite, making animal sounds. He would stop periodically, moan, grunt, he'd kick up leaves, then he'd run past his campsite again, over and over and over again, until the sun finally came up with this guy scampered off back into the woods. Matt didn't waste any time. He leapt out of his tent, packed his stuff up, and ran all the way back to his car. When he finally got inside his car, shut the door, and locked it, crying tears of joy. So unbelievable. He left the parking lot, got to a nearby hotel, finally got cell phone reception, and he considered calling the police about this guy, but he thought, what am I going to tell them? He didn't commit a crime. He was just terrible. And so he decided not to call the police. He finally flew back to New York. Had to accept that there was some strange guy out in the wilderness of Washington State who was able to hunt him over 3 days and 30 miles in rugged terrain without a specific flashlight, without any gear, and all he ever said to Matt was, "We're going to get to Ghost Canyon." The point where we actually have the longest story for you. This final story has quickly become one of the classics of this channel. It's a story about a forest in Connecticut that is actually illegal to enter recently because of maybe paranormal activity out there, we don't know, but it is actually illegal to go into this forest. There's a whole crazy story around it. I actually told the story on a live stream recently about Dudleytown, and so we went ahead and took that footage, edited it, made it really pretty, and now you get to watch it in case you didn't see it. In the summer of 1906, there was this couple, Dr. William Clark and his wife Harriet, and they were up in northwestern Connecticut, and they're driving along this winding country road in a place called Litchfield County. And as they're driving along, it's so scenic and beautiful, with rolling hills, green everywhere. And what they were doing is they were looking for a location in this area that could serve as a location for their second home. So Dr. Clark was a psychologist, and they lived back in New York City, where he and his wife lived kind of a fabulous life. He was super successful. He was not only an oncologist, he was a big-time professor as well. And so they lived this amazing life in New York. But, their lives were really hectic. New York City is a hectic place. Add in the fact that they were very social people, always going out, going to functions and this and that. And so they had some extra money. They wanted to, buy or build a second home that was going to serve as their retreat away from the city. And after, looking all around the country, they found Litchfield County was kind of like the opposite of New York City. Very few people were living there at the time, and again, it's a beautiful, sweet place. And so it just seemed kind of like the perfect spot. So again, Dr. Clark and Harriet were just driving along a beautiful day. They eventually, in Litchfield County, reach this beautiful red wood-covered bridge, go over it, and they get to the other side, their field of view opened up. There's a bunch of trees right on the side of this bridge, and they suddenly had this view up and to the right, maybe half a mile away or something,
of this weirdly shaded forest. Now you got to remember that basically everywhere they're looking, there's trees everywhere. It's very dense forest everywhere. But there was just this one kind of rise, a pretty big hill, prominent hill, that was really dark, like totally shaded. It was because there's two mountains, there were two hills on either side of it, almost creating like a valley. And so it just looked like, wow, it's a very shaded forest. As you can see, it's actually called the Dark Forest, in part because of how shaded it is. And so they've just come out of this bridge, they're seeing this area up on this hill, there's no buildings, nothing, it's just trees. And there was just something immediately about it that really stood out to Dr. Clark and his wife. And they noticed that the road they were on, there appeared to be like an access road that kind of splintered off the road they were on that appeared to go up into that forest, that market forest. And so they look at each other and they're like, hey, let's go there. Maybe that's the place where we can find our spot for our second home. And so Dr. Clark pulls off the main road, goes to the access road, begins making his way up towards this dark forest area. And really quickly, the road itself was very overwhelmed. At first it seemed like it was relatively well maintained, but the farther up they went towards this dark forest, the rougher it got, to the point where Dr. Clark couldn't even drive on it. There was too many potholes and everything. So they ended up pulling the car over, parking, and at this point they're actually in a clearing, and they can actually see up ahead of them where they parked. It looks almost like an entry to the forest. The tree line is right in front of them, and there's kind of like a gap in the trees where this rugged road kind of continues into the forest, and they continue walking on foot towards the entry of this forest. Again, it's beautiful, scenic, very sunny, beautiful day. They're super excited, and they walk into the shade of the forest. And right away, it's like all of the sunlight basically vanishes, but not in a spooky way, kind of like they've lowered the brightness slightly. It's very quiet, and the canopy in the dark empty forest is known for being really, really thick, and so not much light is pushing through, but it created almost like, it was like they were walking into a bubble. It's just pure, unadulterated silence and peace. And as they're walking on this road, which quickly becomes mostly like a little path, it doesn't even look like a road, it's just kind of like grass that's been pushed down. Clearly, not many people or anything is coming into this forest, at least up in this direction. And as they're walking along, they're looking around and they're like, this place is so beautiful. I mean, it was already beautiful, but this is especially beautiful. Like they walked maybe a couple hundred feet into the forest, and off to their right is this apple orchard, untouched. No one's taking these apples. It's just like a wild apple orchard. And there's deer that are just eating the apples off the tree, and they're looking over at Dr. Clark and his wife, and they're completely unafraid. They don't see people, so it's not terrifying. Deer just eating their apples, and then on the other side of the road, there's this huge fields full of flowers. And again, trees are everywhere, but there's all these flowers at the base of the trees. Lilies, roses, yellow bitter tansies, or things that are it's all beautiful flowers. And then at some point, as they walked a little bit farther into the dark end of the forest, the sunlight that was poking through, it was hitting the ground in such a way that it was actually sparkling, because this forest was actually on a hillside, and there was this mineral mica, you're familiar, it's this little translucent, it's like a cloudy glass. That's actually a mineral that goes from the ground. And when the sunlight hits it, it kind of looks like it sparkles. And so they're looking around, and these wild animals that are unafraid of them, and flowers, and there's, babbling brooks, and streams. I mean, it's like out of a Disney. This is like a perfect place. And so by the time the couple came out of Dark Entry Forest, this is only, they walked around for maybe an hour or so. By the time they were coming out, they were completely sold that that was going to be where they went ahead and bought their land to build a second home. And so they go back to New York City, and they put in the paperwork to buy the land, and they buy 1,000 acres in this forest, which is ridiculous to imagine just casually buying 1,000 acres anywhere. But they did. They bought 1,000 acres, and as soon as they had it, as soon as it was finalized, Dr. Clark began going around to all these builders, local builders in Connecticut, that would help him build his home. He had no intention of building some huge home. They bought a huge amount of land. They only wanted to build a small cabin. But despite the job being relatively simple, and despite Dr. Clark offering quite a bit of money to anybody who's willing to go out there and build this for him, none of the builders would do it. They never really gave a straight answer. to Dr. Clark about why they would not go into Dark Entry Forest, but universally, no one would do it. And so, Dr. Clark, he definitely was discouraged by that, but he just kind of chalked it up to, okay, so obviously it's kind of an isolated place, it's relatively hard to get into Dark Entry Forest, and where they had bought this land, it was pretty far into the forest. And so he just was like, okay, just worth it for them. It's logistically kind of a nightmare, but he can do it. And so Dr. Clark is undeterred, and he decides he will just build the house himself. Dr. Clark, he grew up on a farm in New Jersey, he died, he built buildings before, so this is. So over the next several months, every weekend, Dr. Clark will make his way on his own to Dark Entry Forest. It also is full of owls. Moving all the time, so there's this audio side of being in this forest, which is really intense. There's owls moving constantly, and actually, Dr. Clark owls are cute. These owls, it seems like they're almost personally reading them as they came in the forest. And so Dr. Clark, every weekend for several months, would go to Dark Entry Forest, greeted by the owls, go to the land where the 1,000-acre land, and actually he'd identify this one kind of flat spot, 1,000 acres, that was good for building a home. And so the first thing he did, in several weekends he was out there, is he just cut down this massive swath of about trees, just kind of clearing out that flat area, and then he chopped up trees like that on the lumber and used that to build a rustic, simple, two-story cabin. And after this cabin was built, kind of on this hill, there happened to be another hill not too far away from the cabin where there was a freshwater spring right at the top. So, Clark went up and began piping from the freshwater spring down to his cabin, so they had fresh water in the cabin. And then down the hill where the cabin was constructed was a small brook. And Dr. Clark, he found himself always going down, just staring into this beautiful brook because there were all these trout. Because nobody fished out here. This is like a ice basin. There's all these trout just swimming around, unencumbered, just leaping out of the water. They can do that, I don't know if trout do that, I think they do. And so he ended up actually building a swimming pool right next to it, specifically so that he could sit in the swimming pool and watch the trout. And so by Thanksgiving of that year, so 1906, by Thanksgiving, the property was done. The cabin had been built and it was constructed. It's a holiday season. Harriet and the family would come out and spend holidays sitting in their pool, watching the trout, and it's having a wonderful time. And really, for many years, every summer and every major holiday, our family would come out to their beautiful Dark Entry cabin and they would see it was really perfect. It is until 1918. In 1918, in the summer, Dr. Clark and Harriet were at their cabin. They were having a nice time when Dr. Clark got word that he was actually being called back to New York City for an emergency. Remember, he's an oncologist, so these things happen, and he was called back. And for whatever reason, Harriet, who normally likely would have joined him and just gone back to live with him, she decided to stay. And they'd been coming here for years by this point, so she probably felt somewhat comfortable. Although, admittedly, she was very happy because she didn't want to be there alone. But again, she decides to stay. But she tells Dr. Clark, because she didn't know how long he would actually be in New York. He didn't know either. But she said, "You gotta promise me you'll be back here as soon as you possibly can." And Dr. Clark would tell her that, I'll do my best. I should be back here in maybe, a couple of days from now. And I promise you I'll come home as soon as I possibly can. And so Dr. Clark packs up his things, and he and his wife, they leave their cabin, they walk their way down the trail, listening to the owls, looking at the Micah, marveling, sparkling on the ground, and they leave the forest, and they make their way to a nearby train station, which actually was not that far away from the forest. And Harriet talked about her husband, and she watched as he boarded, taken off, and disappeared. Dr. Clark has his family. Just for a couple of days, I'll be back in no time. Little did he know, over the course of time he was going to be born, his wife would endure something that's just truly horrifying. So, before I explain to you what happened after Dr. Clark left, you need to understand some history about this forest. History that Dr. Clark and Harriet did not look into before deciding to purchase these 1,000 acres. Because had they done research into this area, they likely would not have gone. So, there actually used to be a town that was settled in the forest. It's called Dudleytown. It was settled in the 1740s. At first, it was just a couple of families just getting by. Pretty quickly, it grew to about 30 families, some structures and places, all nine yards. It's a small community inside this beautiful forest. And things were great. For a small town in the 1700s, things were stable. But starting in the end of the 1700s, so the 1790s until about the 1800s, things started to go really, really badly in Dudleytown. In fact, because of how badly it went, it earned this. The conclusion was that Dudleytown had to be cursed, and that lore had stuck around, which is actually why those builders refused to do the work of the River because they believed it was a cursed place. So this is what led to it being believed to be cursed. And I'll tell you, it's pretty creepy. So it started with the Carter family. So the Carter family, big family, inside Dudleytown, and it was then 1790, 1792. There was this cholera epidemic that broke out in this town. 6 members of the Carter family died really suddenly from cholera. And the remaining members of the Carter family just had a good chunk of people. They were so great-stricken from costs that they decided to just literally abandon their houses in Dudleytown and go back to New York City. They had as well, so as well. But as soon as they got to New York, they would massacre the natives that they could carry. And the only people that survived this massacre were 3 children. The 3 children were kidnapped from the story. And so that was the start of bad things happening to people in Dudleytown. The next thing that happened is there was a guy named Hollister. We don't know his last name, but he either fell off a roof or he was pushed. We don't really know, but either way he died. But he died on or near another person's home whose name was Tanner. Okay, so Hollister dies. He dies on or near Tanner's home. And after Hollister died, which again is shrouded in mystery, Tanner, where this guy died, he began talking obsessively about strange creatures lurking around the tree line instead of Dark Entry Forest right around Dudleytown every night. And that's all he saw. So the guy dies, and all of a sudden Tanner is noticing all of these strange creatures. And he's telling everybody in town that there's something going on. So slowly, Tanner every night would see whatever he was seeing, completely insane. He couldn't function in this way because his daughter had to take care of him until he passed away. And as Tanner was losing his mind, his next door neighbor, whose name was Abel, began to talk as well about these creatures that were coming to the edge of the tree line surrounding Dudleytown most nights. And just like Tanner, Abel as well slowly lost his mind over these creatures with the open meat. Then, all the way up until just past the 1800s, so many people just randomly died in Dudleytown. Some from disease for sure, and others they just be found dead. Many people as well began citing these strange creatures. By 1900, the only family that was still alive in Dudleytown was this family called Rhodes. It was a fairly big family, and the mother, she suddenly died of cholera. The 2 sons, they were accused of theft in another town and fled and vanished. And so literally it's down to John Littlefield, the actual last person who's living in Dudleytown. And one night, he didn't know apparently he didn't know why, but his cabin burned to the ground. And after his cabin burned, while his cabin was burning, people were called out and smoke came out from this fire. The last anyone saw John, who's lost his whole family, he's lost everything, is he just walked deeper into the forest and he's never seen him. Why is it? It's the last person who lived in Dudleytown, and that marks the moment that Dudleytown went from still being occupied to being a living place. And I should look up the newspaper article that documented the moment when Dudleytown became a ghost town. And it's a few years later is when Dr. Clement and Harriet were taking their stroll through Litchfield County and up into Dark Entry Forest and saying, wow, this is the place for us. And they saw the ruins of Dudleytown. They walked past the crumbling foundations of these homes. There's all these remnants of this town that is still there, but much the way they viewed the Owls as being kind of charming, they also viewed this rundown old town that was gone That's kind of cute, and it made them want to stay there home. So they were aware of the town, but didn't do the research. Apparently, Dudleytown was cursed, and that is where they bought their land. So, fast forward to 1918. So Dr. Clark left for this emergency trip to New York, and it turned out he was only needed in New York for 36 hours. It was, as short as he could have expected it to be. So less than 2 days later, keeping his word to his wife, he's back on the train, and he's heading back to that stop where Harriet had dropped him off. And although this was rare that Dr. Clark would meet his wife, he expected her to be waiting for him at the train station. They didn't have an exact time that he was needed. It wasn't out of the entire plan. But he had said, be here 1 or 2 days fast. So he just kind of expected his wife to check the schedule and get the train time for him. But as he's pulling into the station, he sees his wife is not there. Now, this was not some huge cause of concern, but it was enough of a red flag that as he's pulling into the station, Dr. Clark is thinking something's off. So he ends up going from the train station and actually walked the rest of the way. He didn't take a car with him. He walked to the access road, and just up to the forest. And as soon as he walked into the forest, daylight out here, steps into the canopy, it's dark again. And remember, it used to just wonderful open to that forest was so peaceful. Now it is a different thing. He steps into the forest, and suddenly it feels threatening, it feels ominous. And the owls, the whole time he steps in, it didn't feel like they were reading. It felt like they were telling him. But he had to find his wife. She's waiting for him. And so he begins kind of jogging, fast walking, he's getting a little nervous in the forest. As he's moving through, the sounds of his owls get louder and louder and louder, and they're threatening until finally when he gets to the clearing, when he can actually look up and see where he built his cabin on this hill, it's like a cacophony. It's just constant moving, almost like it doesn't even sound like it. It's just a loud sound. It's constant. And so Dr. Clark is thinking, he gets that